The sky cracked open above our settlement, and I dropped my tray of medical supplies right there on the gravel path. A streak of fire tore across the clouds, screaming as it fell, and I knew before it hit the ground that something terrible had just happened. The impact shook the dirt under my boots. Birds scattered from the tree line. Somewhere behind me, my neighbor Daniel shouted at me to get back inside, that whatever crashed out there was not our business. I did not listen. My name is Owen Hale, and I have spent 6 years as the only medic for our small outpost on the edge of nowhere, a rock of a colony called Varen's Hollow that most star charts do not even bother naming. I am not a soldier. I have never held a weapon that was not a suture needle, but something in me could not stand still while a ship burned less than half a mile from my clinic. I grabbed my emergency kit and ran toward the smoke. The wreck was worse than I expected. Metal that was not built by human hands lay twisted and scorched across a wide crater, still hissing with heat. The hull was unmarked, sleek, in a way that made my skin crawl, like it belonged to something that was never meant to be seen up close. I climbed over broken plating, calling out, though I did not expect an answer in any language I understood. Then I heard breathing, ragged, shallow, alive. I found her wedged between two collapsed beams, her armor cracked open like an eggshell, dark blood pooling beneath her. She was tall, taller than any person I had ever treated, with skin the color of pale ash and eyes that flickered open just enough to focus on me. Her face was carved with old scars, layered over new wounds, and even half-conscious, even broken, there was something in the way she held herself that told me she was used to being feared. She reached for something at her side, a weapon maybe, or a blade. Her fingers found nothing but torn fabric. I raised both hands, slow and steady, the way I would with any frightened patient. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said, knowing she probably could not understand a word. "I'm here to help. Just let me help." Her eyes searched my face for a long moment, weighing something I could not guess. Then her hand fell back to the ground, and she let out a breath that sounded almost like surrender. I did not wait for permission after that. I worked through the night. Her injuries were severe, unlike anything in my human medical training, but wounds are wounds, no matter the shape of the body they belong to. I cleaned, I stitched, I stopped bleeding with pressure and steady hands. I gave her fluids from my own kit, mixed carefully after testing her blood against every safe compound I carried. More than once she flinched away from me, her whole body tensing like she expected pain, like she expected betrayal. I kept my voice low and calm the entire time, even though she could not understand my words. I told her about my colony, about the 2 moons that rose over Varen's Hollow, about the garden I kept behind my clinic, where nothing ever seemed to grow properly. I do not know why I talked so much. Maybe because silence felt too heavy for a room where someone was fighting to stay alive. By sunrise, her breathing had steadied. She was still weak, still in pain, but alive, and that was enough for me. Word travels fast in a small colony, and by midday, half of Varen's Hollow knew I had pulled a stranger from the wreck. Daniel came by the clinic, arms crossed, worry written across his face. "You don't know what that thing is," he said. "Could be a scout, could be the first wave of something worse." "She's not a thing," I said. "She's a person who almost died. That's all I need to know right now." He did not look convinced, but he left me alone, which was all I really wanted. Over the following days, she grew stronger. She watched me constantly, her eyes tracking every movement I made around the room, like she was still waiting for the moment I would turn on her. I brought her food, simple broths and soft bread, since I had no idea what her body could safely digest otherwise. She ate carefully at first, testing each bite, and slowly, the tension in her shoulders began to ease. One evening, as I changed the bandages across her side, she caught my wrist. Her grip was gentle, careful not to hurt me, though I had the distinct feeling that if she wanted to, she could have crushed the bone with almost no effort at all. She studied my face, and for the first time she spoke. The words meant nothing to me, foreign and rough, but the tone was unmistakable. She was asking why. I did not have a translator device, nothing fancy enough to bridge our languages, so I answered the only way I could. I pointed to her wound, then to my own hands, then shook my head slowly, trying to show that I expected nothing in return. No payment, no answer, no debt. She stared at me for a long moment, confusion clear across her features, like the concept itself was foreign to her. It took another 2 days before real trouble arrived. I was outside gathering water when I heard the low hum of engines cutting through the sky, different from the wreck that had fallen before. Sharper, more controlled. 3 sleek ships descended near the crater, and armored figures spilled out, moving with the precision of trained hunters. They wore markings I did not recognize, dark red sigils stitched across black plating, and the moment their leader stepped forward, the whole colony seemed to hold its breath. He spoke into some kind of translator device strapped to his collar, his voice booming across the open field. "We are searching for a fugitive, a warrior known across a dozen systems. You will surrender her, or your settlement will be destroyed." My stomach dropped. Fugitive, warrior, known across a dozen systems. Daniel grabbed my arm before I could react. "Owen, what have you gotten us into?" I did not have an answer. I turned and ran back toward my clinic, my mind racing through every possibility, every terrible outcome. When I burst through the door, she was already standing, leaning heavily against the wall, her wounds still healing, but her eyes sharp and alert. She had heard the commotion. She understood the danger even without knowing the words. I tried to explain, gesturing wildly toward the door, toward the ships outside, but she held up a hand, silencing me with a look that carried more authority than any soldier I had ever met. Then she straightened, slowly, painfully, but she straightened, and something shifted in the way she carried herself, like a switch had been flipped somewhere deep inside her. The frightened, wounded stranger I had cared for over the past week was gone, replaced by something else entirely, something ancient and terrifying and absolute. She walked toward the door, and I followed, unable to stop myself, my heart hammering against my ribs. Outside, the hunters had formed a wide perimeter around the colony, weapons raised, waiting. The moment she stepped into view, something extraordinary happened. Every single one of them froze. Weapons that had been steady seconds before began to shake in their owner's hands. The leader's translator device crackled as his breath caught audibly. "Impossible," he whispered, the word barely carrying across the field. "The Reaper of Calith Front. She died. We confirmed it." She said something in return, her voice low and even, carrying none of the fear that had gripped the hunters. Whatever she said, it landed like a physical blow. Weapons lowered. Several of the armored figures actually took a step backward, retreating without being ordered to. The leader's hands trembled as he raised them, palms open, a universal sign of surrender that needed no translation. He spoke rapidly, urgently, and though I understood nothing, the desperation in his voice was unmistakable. Then she turned her head slightly toward me, and something in her expression softened, just for a moment, before she turned back to the hunters and spoke a final command. They left. All 3 ships lifted off within minutes, retreating into the sky without a single shot fired, without a single life lost. The colony stood in stunned silence, and I stood beside the woman I had pulled from a burning wreck. The woman I now understood was feared across the galaxy, and I realized I still knew almost nothing about her, except that she had chosen mercy when she could have chosen otherwise. Over the weeks that followed, as her wounds fully healed, I learned pieces of her story through patience, through slow exchanges, using a battered translator I managed to acquire through traders passing our system. She had been betrayed by her own people, sent on a mission designed to fail, left for dead by those she had served faithfully for decades. She expected the same from everyone she met after that. Cruelty answered with cruelty, strength respected only through fear. She had never expected kindness from anyone, least of all from a species her people considered weak and insignificant. "Why did you help me?" she asked one evening, sitting across from me in my small clinic, her voice steady now, stripped of its earlier confusion. "You gained nothing. You risked everything." I thought about the question carefully before answering. "You were hurt," I said simply. That was enough of a reason for me. She was quiet for a long time after that, staring at her hands, at the scars that marked decades of violence she had endured and caused in equal measure. When she finally looked up, there was something new in her eyes, something that had not been there when I first found her in the wreckage. "Among my people, mercy is treated as weakness," she said. "I have never understood why your kind is spoken of so dismissively across the stars. I think perhaps we have been looking at the wrong measure of strength entirely." She stayed at Varen's Hollow long after she had fully recovered, longer than anyone expected, myself included. Word of what happened that day spread quietly across trade routes and outposts, carried by traders and travelers who had witnessed the aftermath. The galaxy's greatest warrior, the one empires feared and armies fled from, had chosen to stand beside a small, unarmed colony of humans, simply because one of them had shown her kindness without asking for anything in return. I never became a hero in any grand sense. I never picked up a weapon or fought in some great battle written into history. I remained exactly what I had always been, a quiet medic on a forgotten colony, tending to whoever needed help, human or otherwise. But sometimes, late in the evening, when the twin moons rose over Varen's Hollow, I would sit beside her on the porch of my clinic, and we would talk about nothing in particular, and I would think about how strange it was that the smallest act of compassion had changed the course of something so much larger than myself. The galaxy feared her strength. I simply saw someone who needed help. And in the end, that was enough to change everything.